As you can tell by my shitty accent, I'm English, and I'm very patriotic, so I felt the urge to make this video defending my little country. Just weeks after the 2024 Euro final, during which football didn't come home, it'll probably take a while to get over the disappointment. I've been on this earth for 10 World Cup tournaments and 10 Euros, with England qualifying for 18 of them, and during this time I can't help but feel we must be one of the unluckiest and most unfairly criticised countries on earth. Yet other people don't see it that way. A quick check of social media during the recent Euros and you'll see that many people are critical of England for being the worst finalists ever. Beating Spain isn't for everyone, having the easiest run to a major final ever. Even James McLean was running his mouth, and who remembers him? Yeah, exactly, nobody. So I wanted to explore if that criticism was fair. So today I'll look at a short history of the England team, look at our failings, our successes, and don't worry, that part doesn't take too long, and basically explore a few myths as I answer. Is the English media as bad as everyone says? Why do we sing it's coming home when it apparently never has? Are we really the worst finalists ever? But also a question that's been nagging me for some time. Are England the unluckiest national team in the world? For the answer to all of these, stick around to find out. Myth number 1, and I need to get this one off my chest. I know I said it at the start of the video, but it's coming home from the song Three Lions. You may have heard that song. Doesn't mean that we think we're going to win every damn trophy in existence. The song was released in 1996 for England hosting the Euros, and the song literally means that football's coming home to the country that professionalised the sport and came up with the first set of rules. The rest of the song is about hope, how our shitty little country keeps failing, and I'm surprised that I have to cram all of our failings into a song under 4 minutes, to be honest. But there's absolutely nothing in the song that means any trophies are coming home, and I just wanted to set the record straight. So, we've spoken about hope, so let's dash all that out by talking about how England played in Euro 2024, which wasn't massively hopeful, and looking at whether England are the worst finalist ever, or had the easiest route to the final, as some suggest. And the short answer is no, not by a mile, so let's have a look why. On the way to the final, England drew to the team who beat Portugal 2-0 before the tournament, beat the team who beat the third best team in the world according to FIFA World Rankings, and then beat a very good Netherlands team. We can debate all day about whether it should have been a penalty, but come on, it was. Anywhere else on the pitch it's a foul, and I'll drop an explanation here that I found online which was very well explained if you want to pause and read it, because they explained it in a far more intelligent way than I could. But even if you think these matches were easy, let's have a look at a few others. The 2002 World Cup final springs immediately to mind, with Germany playing Paraguay, USA and South Korea, scoring a huge 3 goals, and Brazil played the might of Turkey twice, Costa Rica and China, where England were maybe their toughest opponent. Or what about Italy in Euro 1968, who won the semi-final on a coin toss? Or let's look at the AFCON, where Senegal were ranked 20th in the world in 2021, but the average ranking of their opponents were 89th. Or in the Copa America, where Brazil won the tournament in 99 when they played against teams ranked 115th and their opponents in the final were ranked 74th, for a tournament they didn't even need to qualify for. So no, it was not the easiest run to a final ever. So now let's explore if they're the worst finalists ever. And no, they're nowhere near the worst. In 1982, Italy progressed from the group despite not winning the match, finished level with Cameroon and only went through on goals scored by 1 goal. Or Argentina in 1990, who lost their first match to Cameroon, again, what is it with Cameroon? And scored 2 goals in their 3 knockout matches up to the final, or 2 goals in 4 knockout games if we include the final. We could even lump Spain 2010 in there. Hang on, hear me out. One of England's criticisms is a lack of goals, and while Spain may have played delightful tiki-tappy tiki-taka football, they lost their first match and only scored 4 goals in 4 knockout matches to win the trophy. So, worst finalist ever, 100% total weapons grade complete mythical nonsense. Anyway, when you look over our tournaments in the World Cup and Euros, there have been controversies, bad decisions or just downright lucky goals scored against us. Which many teams have, of course, but we've had everything from players scoring miss-hit crosses, goalkeepers removing their gloves to save our penalties, we were that bad at them, and even players scoring against us with their hand, but more on that later. So now, I was only going to pick out a few tournaments to look at our fortunes so as to not bore you, but in the interest of research and really looking into whether we're unlucky or just crap, I thought it was best that we take a look at each tournament we've played in order. So strap in and let's answer the question together of why I think we're one of the unluckiest nations in the world. England's poor record in major tournaments starts in 1950 when we played in the World Cup for the first time. Before that, England decided they were too good to be asked to play in these newfangled tournaments, and to a degree it was right. England were one of the top teams at the time and didn't need to prove it. But how they needed to prove it in the match against the USA when a team of plumbers, secretaries, cleaners and nurses, I don't know, I made a bit of that up, upset the cocky team and won 1-0 courtesy of a goal from a guy who wasn't even born in the USA. This meant that England played Spain with their towels in between their legs needing to win, but unfortunately Spain had Telmo Zarra, a guy who held the La Liga scoring record for 50 odd years, only until Leo Messi broke it, and whose 81 goals in the Copa del Rey still a record to this day, who scored the only goal of the game to send us packing. We can write this tournament off as England just being a little arrogant and unprepared, and we went home in shame. In 1954 we won the group, probably helped by a unique rule, which meant that as England and Italy were top seeds, they didn't have to play each other in the group, but then we lost in the knockouts to defending champion Uruguay, and there's no shame in losing to the defending champs, is there? Fast forward to 1958, to the only World Cup where all 4 home nations qualified, but just 4 months before the tournament the football world was rocked by the Munich air disaster, where the England team lost great players such as Duncan Edwards and Roger Byrne. In the group, Brazil and England played out the first goalless draw in World Cup history, which is very typical of England as we specialise in grinding out draws, and we finished with an identical record to the Soviet Union, so a playoff was held, which of course England lost 1-0. But this was an excellent Soviet Union team who would win the first Euros just 2 years later. In fact, of the 5 Euros tournaments they played in, they reached the final 4 times. That's 4 finals in 5 tournaments. Bonkers. That's how good this Soviet team was during that era, so again, a narrow 1-0 loss is no great embarrassment. In fact, we were the only team to play the eventual winners Brazil and not lose, so there's that, I guess. England couldn't even be bothered with this new Euros tournament, so when various FAs were voting for or against this new UEFA tournament in 1957, some sources say that all British FAs abstained from voting as this new tournament would interfere with the British home international tournament. Yeah, really. In the 1962 World Cup we reached the quarter-final where we lost 3-1 to defending champions Brazil, who need no introductions, one of the best teams of the era and would go on to win the tournament. But just to really highlight our luck in World Cups, a dog ran on the pitch during the match and peed on Jimmy Greaves. And just to really rub it in, Garrincha later adopted the dog and named it after Greaves. England now decided that they could be asked to play following a pretty decent debut tournament 4 years before. Not that it mattered as we got pumped by France in qualifying and didn't even reach the main tournament, as France battered us 5-2. Into 1966 and the tournament of Soviet linesmen, people on the pitch and stolen World Cup trophies. But take nothing away from this England team winning the tournament fair and square. Okay, I'll say that with a hint of irony. I'm well aware there's controversy surrounding Jeff Hurst's goal, but let's explore a few points that have come up from time to time about this tournament. Firstly, I've read a few times that England only won because we were hosts. Let's shoot that one down right away. Never question the depth of my knowledge and research because by my reckoning 69 major tournaments have been won by the hosts, 73 if we include the UEFA and CONCACAF Nations Leagues. So quite why England would receive criticism that 70 other winning teams haven't would be anyone's guess, so let's also dismiss that one. Then there's Hurst's goal in the final, which some blind people think never crossed the line, which has been debated for the last 56 years. It's blatantly obvious it went over the line and here's the image to prove it. See? There have been research done into this over the years, with Sky Sports concluding somehow that it did cross the line, whereas a study by Oxford University, which uses lots of big words and images that confuse me, states it was nowhere near being over the line. But all of this is a bit of a moot point when you consider that Germany's equaliser in the last seconds shouldn't have even counted as it came from a very debatable free kick decision. But sometimes you need a little luck, such as Hurst's hat-trick goal, which was completely accidental as he was trying to smash the ball into the crowd to waste time. It's just not often that we're on the receiving end of that bit of luck. But as it later transpired that some of the Germany players had performance-enhancing drugs in their system, we'll just overlook that and take the luck where we can, shall we? The first Euros that Little England would take part in, and we won our first match in the quarter-final, which was actually a confusingly a qualifying match for the final tournament, beating a Spain team who couldn't really be asked to attack, and in the semi-final against Yugoslavia and two teams who really didn't like each other, and after 49 free kicks in the match, yes 49, it's a wonder that there was ever any time to play any actual football, and I have to say that a lot of the fouling was done by England players, so no great surprise that towards the end of the game Mullery became the first England player to ever be sent off when he kicked Fivic in the nuts. So, how angry was manager Alf Ramsey at the first ever red card in any Euros match? He told him that he's glad someone retaliated against those bastards and paid Mullery's £50 fine. Ramsey complained about the Yugoslav tackles, and while there was some bad ones, the majority were from England. 40 odd years later, Yugoslav defender Blagoj Paunovic claimed that England team were arrogant, which Bobby Charlton replied, "We were confident, yes, not arrogant," showing the fine line between confidence and arrogance and how others perceive it. Heading into 1970 genuine title contenders, which was all going according to plan until the quarter-final when West Germany got their revenge. Gordon Banks was out with food poisoning and Peter Bonetti went in goal, which is like swapping your Ferrari for a Ford Fiesta. England let slip a 2-0 lead to lose 3-2. Nothing out of the ordinary, teams let leads slip all the time, except that some conspiracy theorists believed that Banks was targeted. Banks himself didn't believe it at the time, but as the years went on he started to believe it more and more, especially when he realised that all the squad ate the same food. Many think that England would have won if Banks played, and it also didn't help that Bobby Charlton was subbed off while England was winning 2-1, which turned out to be his last match for England. But let's not kid ourselves, as even if we got past Italy in the semis, which means denying the good people witnessing the game of the century that did happen between Italy and Germany, we'd have played 1970 Brazil in the final, and that's a scary thought. After a 4th place finish in '68, could England build on that? No. We didn't even qualify. When Bobby Moore tries to dribble around 2 players in the box in qualifiers against Germany and loses it, allowing them to score, it set the tone for another year. Moore was in the thick of it again later in that match when he felt held outside the box, but the referee gave a penalty which Gunter Netzer scored. Although it was still 1-1 until the last few minutes, this was the first real time in nearly 20 years that England had been totally outplayed in our own backyard. But to put it into perspective, we weren't all that bad. The Germans vote this match as the best German international football match of all time. They played that well, and there's even a Wikipedia page for this match on the German site, in what is now known as Der Wembley Elf, if you can understand German that is. So we just came up against a superb team who would go on to lift the next World Cup. We didn't qualify in 1974, we couldn't get past Poland, which seems slightly more ridiculous now, but at the time they were Olympic champions who went on to finish 3rd in the tournament. We screwed up qualification for 1976, drawing twice to Portugal in qualifying to hand the group to Czechoslovakia, who would not only go on to qualify but would win the whole tournament. Czechoslovakia would also engage in shithousery tactics against England, leading to sub-keeper Alexander Wenzel getting sent off, and England manager Don Revie moaned about Czech provocation. Yeah, the same Don Revie who managed 1970s Leeds, but England blew their chance to qualify again. In 1978 we failed to qualify on goals scored, with Italy scoring 3 more. Fine margins. Another poor tournament not helped by odd selection decisions, with manager Ron Greenwood dropping Trevor Brooking for Ray Kennedy, playing Gary Birtles up front, a guy with 13 minutes of international football to his name, and a weird selection policy of rotating goalkeepers meant that Ray Clements was dropped in favour of Peter Shilton. All of this meant that a team with 19 European Cup medals between them stumbled to 3rd place in the group. But Kevin Keegan said afterwards that we have to go in one direction or the other, total football or defensive football. I hope it will be total football. Sadly, Kev, it's been rather defensive football ever since, but I would love it if we could start playing some total football. The tournament in '82 was very weird, as England were eliminated despite not losing a single match. Algeria were eliminated despite winning 2 of their 3 group games, thanks to a conspiracy between West Germany and Austria. And as mentioned earlier, Italy went through despite not winning the match in the group and progressed by 1 goal over Cameroon. And just to really show how our luck is, Brian Robson scored the World Cup's fastest ever goal and was even given a fancy watch as a gift by FIFA to commemorate the occasion, until FIFA later found out that it wasn't the fastest goal, so took that record off him. But FIFA let him keep the watch, so who's laughing now? 1984 was a make or break tournament for UEFA after a rather shit tournament in 1980, leading to UEFA president Artemio Franchi splashing millions on marketing for the tournament, but he never saw the end result as he died in a car crash the year before. And talking of car crash, our qualifying campaign was a total car crash, finishing a point behind Denmark in the group, the 4th time in 6 years that we failed to qualify for the final tournament. But maybe, just like in 1960 when we didn't even enter, we still had a preference for the home internationals, but we couldn't hang on to that excuse for much longer, as the last home international was played this same year. 86. Where do we start with this one? Not the best group stage, which set us up for a quarter-final meeting with Argentina and Maradona. For his first goal, the little hobbit jumped up and punched the ball into the net. Sure, Peter Shilton could have just flattened him or punched it out or just done something, anything, but he probably wasn't expecting this little dweeb to punch the ball past him, and why would he? A few minutes later, another illegal goal followed, as take nothing away from Maradona slithering through the England midfield just like the little snake that he was, but let's not overlook the fact that Glenn Hoddle was completely smashed in the build-up to the goal. And guess what? Ray Charles was refereeing that day, so no free kick of course. In a little consolation, Gary Lineker became the first Englishman to win the World Cup Golden Boot, but neither of Argentina's goals should have stood, and regardless of your opinions on Maradona or England, you can consider us a little unlucky that we lost that match.
Well, I haven't seen the television. All I can go on is what I felt I saw, which was the ball in the air, with Maradona going for it, with Shilton being favourite, and Maradona handled the ball into the goal, didn't he? Didn't he?
So, why did ref Ali bin Nasser miss the blatant handball? He later claimed that some hemorrhoid treatment he was using had affected his sight. Unbelievable. Into 88 and against Ireland in our first match. Forwards John Barnes and Peter Beardsley scored 35 goals between them in the league before the tournament, yet you wouldn't think it as we lost 1-0. So our next match against the Netherlands was a do or die situation. Unfortunately for us, Netherlands manager Rinus Michels restored Van Basten back to the lineup, and an angry Van Basten, pissed off to have been left out the previous match, banged in a hat-trick, which would have been 4 if it weren't for another shot cleared off the line. But above all, it was another tournament heading home early. Some think that the ban of English teams in Europe is part of the reason, as the England players weren't testing themselves on a higher level on a consistent basis, but we'd been shite for a few years, so let's shout that theory down now. Into Italia 90, where the semi-final saw a solid match against the West Germans. Gaza cried like a little tit, but we were just unlucky in coming up against one of the most ruthless penalty-taking countries in existence, as evidenced by the fact that Shilton dived the right way for every penalty but still saved none. But we came up against a team playing their third World Cup final in a row, a stats matched only by Brazil since, and they won the final with, guess what, a penalty. Heading into the 1992 Euros with Graham Taylor in charge was never going to end well. A decent bloke, but was just out of his depth, and it showed in our first match against Denmark when an injury hit team scraped a 0-0 draw, then somehow had an even worse match a few days later against France with not only another 0-0 draw but the worst match of the whole tournament, and after scoring first against Sweden in the last match we spectacularly imploded to concede twice. So what was the reason for the loss according to Taylor after the match? He said in an interview that the first thing that went wrong was half time. Yeah, he said that, but at least the English press took the loss well. Surely we'd have had a good chance in 1994, only we didn't qualify, and we have Ronald Koeman to thank for that. It became the first World Cup to not feature a British home nation since 1938 thanks to another blind referee, this time failing to spot Koeman's foul inside the box and send him off, instead giving a free kick outside the box and a yellow card. Then to further rub it in, Ronnie went and scored, didn't he? Probably helped by David Seaman standing in another town for some reason, in a decision where manager Graham Taylor predicted the future.
I'm just saying to your colleague, referee's got me the sack. Thank him ever so much for that, won't you?
And in the interest of balance, England fans conveniently forget that Frank Rijkaard had a perfectly good goal disallowed. A goal that wouldn't even need the micro-analysis like today where they're seeing whether his toenail was offside, because he was miles on. But in any case, the Netherlands should have finished that game with 10 men. And if you think I'm being a sore loser around decisions, just remember that FIFA reviewed his performance and he never refereed an international match ever again. And just to dispel another myth, no, we wouldn't have qualified if we beat San Marino by 7 goals in the last game, as we still needed to hope that Poland beat the Netherlands, which they didn't. As it happens, the behemoths of San Marino rubbed more salt in the wounds when David Gualtieri scored after 9 seconds. A tournament with fond memories for England fans, but many fans forget just how badly it started or could have been. Alan Shearer hadn't scored for nearly 2 years before the tournament, but opened his account against Switzerland, where we then decided to play out a dire second half where we were lucky to draw 1-1. In the second match against Scotland we played just as badly in the first half and Gaza played even worse, but the lasting memories of Gaza scoring the goal of his life, where luckily we forget just how bad he was for the other 89 minutes. Throwing a poor penalty by Granit McAllister just a minute before that, where if it wasn't for divine intervention moving the ball on the penalty spot just as he hit it, it might not have been such a good day. But at least it all clicked into place in the last match against the Netherlands, where England took advantage of a broken team after Edgar Davids was sent home and Clarence Seedorf had a blazing argument with manager Gus Hiddink. The team in disarray lost 4-1 to an actual good England performance for once, where the Netherlands goal actually eliminated Scotland on goal difference, so it was a good day all round. And so through to the quarter-final against Spain, which went through to a shootout which, believe it or not, England won. But this good win is often overshadowed by some questionable calls for this England team. Salinas had a goal disallowed for offside even though Adams was playing him on. Gascoigne tripped Alfonso for a blatant penalty for which he was booked for diving. Nadal missed a decisive penalty, but make no mistake, this was not a deserved win. But not all winners of matches deserve to win them, right? And through to the semi-final against Germany, and England played a rather decent match for once, going toe-to-toe with the Germans and almost getting a famous win. Shearer scored his 5th of the tournament, and not long later Germany scored through this guy. But then the moment of heartache for us England fans as Gascoigne stretched to meet Shearer's cross but missed it by the width of a pube. So instead of celebrating a golden goal, it was instead penalties. But unlike Shilton 6 years before, Seaman got nowhere near the German penalties, which was the same with German keeper Köpke. That is until Gareth Southgate stepped up. So, just like the last few tournaments as manager, it was again Southgate who prevented us from going further in a tournament, but at least he had the cojones to step up, I guess. And that was it, an apparent summer of memories, but maybe the summer sun had impacted people's memories, as we only looked decent in 2 matches out of 5. But again, the best teams don't always win tournaments, right? France 98. England were fresh off winning their 2nd major trophy the year before when they won Le Tournoi, but this World Cup is best remembered for Michael Owen single-handedly destroying the Argentina defence, as well as David Beckham's harsh sending off. Nobody on earth knows what ref Kim Milton-Nielsen saw when Beckham lightly brushed the back of Simeone's knee, which was apparently enough for this big tough gobby centre midfielder to fall over like my nan after a couple of gin and tonics, and it probably helped that Batistuta was constantly chirping away in his ear to help him come to a decision which was the least violent conduct I've ever seen. But into extra time and England scored again through Sol Campbell, but no! Dim Kim and his guide dog saw a foul by Shearer even though Rower came charging out of his goal and got nowhere near the ball. Not a very rational decision by a keeper not known for rational decisions, but the ref deemed that Shearer had barged into Rower rather than the other way round like it actually was and disallowed the goal. But England still had a chance with penalties. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course we didn't. Losing penalties was our specialty, but it's okay because the English public soon forgave Bex on his return to the country. A cracking match to open our tournament and 2-0 up against Portugal, and life is sweet. But then Portugal suddenly woke up and remembered that they had Rui Costa, Figo and Nuno Gomes, and they came back to win 3-2. A cracking win against Germany followed, and then Romania in the last game. David Seaman was injured in the warm-up and Nigel Martin went in goal, and Romania sensed blood. Even though Hagi was suspended, they still boasted quality like Petrescu, Moldovan, Montiano, Mutu, Ilian and Kivu, whereas we had Dennis Wise, Nick Barmby and Phil Neville, who helpfully gave a last-minute penalty away to knock us out the tournament. But when you lose to Romania and lose a match you're winning 2-0, you can't be expected to win tournaments, so we deservedly got sent packing. 2002 was a tournament that I missed a lot of due to the time difference, as I couldn't be asked to wake up early for the matches whilst also holding the job down. But I was awake when Ronaldinho's miss-hit cross fooled David Seaman. A goal he later said was a bit lucky, then later said it wasn't lucky, it was deliberate, then also said he didn't mean to kick the ball there, so who knows. But that tournament was entirely winnable for us before Ronnie's fluke and subsequent red card, as we lost the quarter-final to Luis Felipe Scolari's team. After a tournament where surprisingly no blind referees took charge of an England match, this all changed in 2004. For those who weren't born in 2004 or were too young, trust me, the hype was genuine. Rooney really was unstoppable, even winning the penalty in the group match against France, which of course we missed, but Rooney was on another level that tournament. But you only have yourself to blame when you're winning 1-0 in the 90th minute and end up losing 2-1, even if Zidane did throw up on the pitch, the tramp. But anyway, into the quarter-final against Portugal. Within the half hour, our golden boy Rooney limped off with a foot injury, and Portugal must have been licking their lips when they saw that his replacement was Darius Vassell. Bearing in mind that Rooney had scored more competitive goals for England in his previous match than Vassell had in his whole career. But Sol Campbell had a massive spell of deja vu in the 90th minute when he scored a header, only for referee Urs Maya to rule it out. So it's quite annoying that Mr Maya later admitted he never saw a foul, saying he trusted his gut, whatever that means, and through to a penalty shootout where, guess what? Yeah, a loss. And to show just how much they feared poor Vassell, Portugal keeper Ricardo took his gloves off to save his penalty, and he never played for England again, as we lost the quarter-final to Luis Felipe Scolari's team. Hang on, haven't I said that once already? 2006 saw us have a little bit of a luck for once when Peter Crouch scored against Trinidad, helped by yanking Santo's head off his shoulders by his hair as we laboured to a 2-0 win. So what's Crouchy got to say about the incident?
Obviously shouldn't have stood.
Foul or no
if
foul?
VAR was in place, it probably wouldn't have stood. But I genuinely didn't know that I'd done that. I apologise for me. I'd love to come to Trinidad as his guest.
Don't think Sancho will be sending you an invite for that anytime soon, Pete. So, for the second tournament in a row, England met Portugal in the quarter-final. For the second tournament in a row, it went to penalties, and for the 300th penalty shootout in a row, England lost. but the main talking point was Wayne Rooney harshly getting sent off for stamping on Ricardo Carvalho when the little scamp was clearly fighting for the ball, a decision that looked far from the referee's mind until the little winker Ronaldo came up and started gobbing off. It was at this point that ref Horacio Elizondo, the same ref who sent Zidane off, remembered that he's from Argentina and therefore hates us and harshly sent Rooney off. But did Wazza mean it? There's your answer, as we lost the quarter-final to Luis Felipe Scolari's team. Hang on, we really lost 3 quarter-finals in a row to Big Phil Scolari. 2008 Euros, and this will be a quick one, the first Euro since '84 where there were no British teams. Remembering the unmistakable sound of vuvuzelas in 2010 and an even more unmistakable error later in the tournament, which didn't start well with Rob Butterfingers Green forgetting that as a keeper is allowed to, keep the ball out of the net, and 2 poor matches against Algeria and Slovenia set us up for a second round match against Germany. Germany raced into a 2-goal lead, but England quickly pulled one back. Straight from the kick-off, Lampard's shot hit the bar and bounced about 35 yards over the line. But unfortunately, England's referee for the day was Mr Magoo, who didn't see the blatant goal and waved play on. The history books will show a heavy 4-1 defeat, but Lampard's goal would have made it 2-2 with England having all the momentum. But as it was, Germany smashed us twice more later in the match as we pushed for another equaliser. Let's gloss over 2012 because it was shit. We lost on penalties, of course we did, this time to Italy, where apparently Joe Hart had the most touches of any England player as Italy dominated us. But I couldn't be asked to verify that fact, as reading any more about this tournament would likely send me into a meltdown. Some say we were lucky in the group match against Ukraine when the ball was over the line when John Terry cleared it. Honestly, what is it about us and goal lines? But anyway, Milevski was offside in the build-up anyway, so it wouldn't have counted, so nah. Somehow in 2014 we were even worse, the first time ever that 3 former World Cup winners were drawn together in the same group, and it ended up being our worst ever group stage performance. But bizarrely, the only team in the group who had never won a World Cup ended up top in the group. We were a little unlucky that Uruguay had 2 shots on target and scored them both, but quite frankly, with these performances we didn't deserve to go through. 2016, Russia, Slovakia, Wales, Iceland, Kane taking corners. Enough said. Funnily enough, heading into the 2018 World Cup there wasn't really a lot of optimism, but then along came Gareth Southgate. Not the high profile appointment that people wanted, but he was in charge of Middlesbrough when they did this. Qualification for the tournament started under Sam Allardyce, but somehow, despite being in football for decades and knowing the sport inside out, he failed to see that it was being set up by an undercover journalist when he started explaining how to break FA rules. Not the brightest bulb in the box, so he stepped down with a 100% winning record and Southgate took over. At least we got out the group this time, finishing second in the group, which was either a stroke of luck or a genius bit of planning by Southgate, as the winner of the group would be in the half with 4 of the top 7 sides in the world. We even won our first World Cup shootout against Colombia and finished 4th, our best result since 1990. Probably could have gone even further if we didn't score up our chance against Croatia, yet again retreating into the hedge like Homer Simpson, but things were looking up. 2020 saw a huge wave of optimism over the country. Top of a tricky group which includes our old nemesis Croatia, a first tournament win over Germany since '66, a hammering of Ukraine and then beating a tough Denmark team in the semis. Sterling was fouled, although play could have been stopped as there was a second ball on the pitch, it just depends if the ref thought if it was interfering with play. And we were through to our first final in decades against the talented Italy team. But this wasn't the Italy team of old. There's no Del Piero, Totti, Baggio, that's Roberto Baggio, not Dino, Cannavaro, Maldini, Vieri, Buffon, Nesta, Pirlo. Wow, it's only now I realise what quality players they've had over the years. But still an excellent side, which to be fair you have to be to make it to a final, but we were still optimistic that our pacey wingers could cause damage against their 2 centre-backs who had a combined age of 174 or something like that. And it started off rather well with the fastest ever Euro final goal, which was the fastest ever England goal at the Euros, but Southgate's management would be called into question yet again as England sat back for the remaining 117 minutes, and the end result is that Bonucci set a record of his own by becoming the oldest goalscorer in the Euros final. Jorginho raked Grealish's knee, warranting a red card, but somehow escaping with a yellow, then faked injury himself in a tackle that wasn't massively dissimilar to Rooney's against Portugal 15 years before, but so far the final had seen it all, apart from any real positive England attacking play, and so to penalties where, you guessed it. By this point Southgate was less waistcoat, more waste of talent. Even if I did complain about Jorginho shouldn't have been on the pitch or Chiellini ripping the shirt off Saka's back, the truth is that once we scored we sat back again. Italy were there for the taking and we didn't deserve to win. I have a massive bugbear with the 2022 World Cup. Except against America, we played out some really good results up to the quarter-final against France, but that's when it went a bit sour. Upamecano executed a perfect MMA-style leg sweep on Saka, and moments later France scored. Then shortly after, he executed another perfect Street Fighter-style leg sweep on Kane in the box, but both went unpunished by referee Wilton Sampaio. Kane had Upamecano on toast this match, rolled him a couple of times and he was struggling to cope. But of course the only thing he'll be remembered for is his missed penalty, which is probably still in orbit. The stats suggest we dominated France, but unfortunately the only stat that France dominated us in was the one that matters. Another early exit, but performances gave cause for optimism, but we can genuinely say that the referee was a shambles. And to answer any questions about how many penalties do you want, you already had 2, the answer is quite simple. We want as many as we're entitled to, which was at least 3. And so into the last tournament England played up to this point. This fan sums up the mood of the nation. Okay, granted this was taken before the match, but that doesn't fit my narrative. Well, let's not just take my word for it, how about other fans?
But it was not good.
Not pleased with it, but we're top of the group.
It was a typical English performance. We underperformed.
Not the most glowing endorsement of Southgate's football, but surely most fans are sticking by him.
What do we need? I'm going to say we need a better manager. He's terrible.
Okay. Still, another penalty shootout win. We're getting good at these now. And many thought that England would get hammered by the Netherlands when in fact they turned in their best performance of the tournament, which wasn't hard. I mean, it could hardly have been any worse. Where Phil Foden had one of his best games in an England shirt, yet Ollie Watkins was on the pitch for 9 minutes and won man the match. Figure that one out. But England were deservedly, at least deserved on the basis of this match, in their second Euros final in a row. Unfortunately for England, it was against the Spaniards, maybe the best team at the tournament. But the best team doesn't always win the tournament, right? 12-year-old Lamine Yamal got an assist, but was otherwise in Luke Shaw's pocket as England contained Spain relatively well. But the fact is that they dominated us in pretty much every stat, even if it did take them until the 87th minute to score the winner and we had one cleared off the line at the end. We can take some comfort from the fact that we had Spain on the ropes for around 3 minutes after we scored. But then Southgate drove the bus right onto the pitch and parked up instead of going for Spain's throat. But Spain were deserved winners, as painful as it is for me to say that. So, a quick recap. Out of 27 tournaments we've played in, we can count ourselves unlucky in 6 of them, arrogant in 1 of them, outclassed in 6 of them, awful in 6 of them, dodgy refereeing in 6 of them, and rode our luck in 2 of them. That's over a third of all tournaments we've been in which have been decided or impacted by refereeing decisions. We've had the odd decision go our way, such as Crouch in 2006, or some would say the World Cup final, and 6 of the major tournaments affected by referees, some of them with the most ridiculous decisions ever made, is just mad. Am I saying that we played amazing in these tournaments and would have won if it wasn't for dodgy decisions? No, not at all, but you have to admit there's been some pretty dodgy decisions against us, far more than we've had go in our favour. And people fail to realise that countries very rarely bulldoze their way through tournaments. Spain were one of the best teams on the planet around 2010, yet lost their first match to Switzerland and scored 4 goals in 4 knockout matches to win the trophy. So why is it different for England? Why, whenever England find a way to grind out a result to progress, to people, usually on social media from across Europe, constantly forget about these other countries who did exactly the same on their way to major finals? Let's have a look as we move into the last part of this video, examining the media and fans. Do we really have the most arrogant, entitled media and fans on the planet? England fans and pundits were hyping this England team before Euro 2024, so let's listen to some of this hype.
I think France and Portugal...
Oh, hang on, weren't they supposed to say England? Let's listen to another.
But I actually have gone with the Portuguese as my favourites.
But I thought we were arrogant and overhype our country. Let's watch another.
Eventual winner still France.
What's going on? I thought we overhype our team. Another.
I'm gonna go Germany again.
Next.
Germany to win it.
Next.
I think it could be a semi-final exit for England.
Another.
Yeah, I've France as my winners.
Another.
France and Portugal.
Another.
They carry on playing as they are. They're going out on Saturday.
Stop. Maybe, just maybe, the fact that we overhype our team is complete nonsense. Of course some pundits say we would or could win tournaments, but with our players we can. It's ridiculous to think we can't with the talent in our team. Our biggest problem over the years is when we play against other talented teams. But joking aside, other countries hyping their teams is always overlooked. Brazil in 1950, before they'd even won the World Cup for the first time, before the final match against Uruguay, their media had already declared them as world champions. They had gold medals made, printed banners, written speeches and organised carnivals, a match which they lost. Scotland manager Ali McLeod confidently declared Scotland could win the 1978 World Cup when they finished third in the group. In 2008, the Dutch Prime Minister was so happy with the Netherlands' performances he announced he was keeping the date of the final 3 in his diary, a match they didn't even reach. Carlos Alcaraz declared Spain would win the Euros, which obviously they did, but that's not the point. It's the apparent hype that other teams are allowed to have, but not this England team. I can give you 1,000 examples which I've been sad enough to research, but a very simple explanation for me is that England, its team and its media are very closely scrutinised and ridiculed across the world, and people are very quick to put England down. And it's pretty obvious why. An estimated 1.5 billion people speak English around the world, over 18% of the world population, 1 in 5 people. More people speak English than any other language, considerably more than Spanish, French, Italian and German speakers combined, according to my research anyway. More people to see our media and what our pundits are saying, from people who don't have a clue what other countries' media are saying because they don't even understand their lingo. So to those on social media who confidently stated that Spain won because there was no pressure on them from their media, I don't quite have the heart to bring up what Alcaraz said, or that Rodrigo Arasti hyped them up before the tournament, or that before the last World Cup Antonio Muelas mentioned Spain as one of the favourites and that it could be a good World Cup, where they got eliminated in the second round. The only conclusion to draw is that people quickly jump on a very big anti-England bandwagon. And that brings us to the end of my massive whinge about this England team and how others see us, but I thought I had some valid points worth sharing. If you're so unfortunate enough to be an England fan, leave a message in the comments. I'm sure it will come home one day, even though in the strictest sense of the lyrics it came home in 1996. But if you like this video, even if you may not agree with everything I've said, that's fine. The world will be a very boring place if everybody agreed with each other. But if that's the case, please watch some of my other stuff, like, tell your friends and family, and punch the subscribe button just like how Maradona punched the ball in '86. And I'll see you in the next video, and have a majestic day.